Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Gryn. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Gryn, and happy 2023. Hope you had a nice holiday and New Year. Spent some time with some family. I was traveling overseas, and took a little break from the micros. Hopefully enjoying some of those interviews I sent you. Remember, I come out with a micro podcast every Tuesday, and Friday's an interview. So if you have any questions or things you want to get discussed on the micro podcast, or you have a guest that you think might be worth having on, just feel free to shoot me an email, brian@briangryn.com. And I'm looking forward to a great year. Got a book coming out, Step Ladder System. Look out for that. That's going to be coming out the next month. So really excited to put a lot of time and effort. And it's taken a little bit longer than I thought, but better late than never. Excited for a happy, healthy new year. And thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you're enjoying my podcast. And today I wanted to do some Q&A. I actually did a Q&A a while back with Brad Kearns. And this one is going to simply be on sleep. I grabbed a bunch of questions, some from clients, some from the internet, tried to find some popular ones, ways that I could sort of guide you around sleep, and maybe some common questions and answers to that. So without further ado, let's get going. And the first question that came up was, why do we need sleep? I think I remember in high school someone telling me that sleep was overrated, and they were wrong, because it's definitely like the number one pillar in health. If you're not getting adequate sleep, you could probably throw out a lot of the other advice that you're maybe getting regarding health. So to focus on that, why we need it, obviously physically and mentally, this is a time where you're able to rest and repair. Your brain's able to consolidate memory and process information. And obviously without adequate sleep, we're more likely to experience problems with concentration, mood, overall physical health. And chronic sleep deprivation, God, that's been linked to, obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. I will say, just from traveling overseas and being in a different time zone, in Israel, it's 8-hour difference. In Dubai, it's 10 hours. And there's definitely an adjustment. And traveling can be tough on the body and tough on the mind, especially when you're traveling all these time zones across the country. But I'm definitely getting back to normal and starting to sleep in normal hours. But you can definitely, if you're used to getting quality sleep, and then you travel like overseas, then you're not getting as good a sleep, you realize how important it really is. So prioritizing it is key. And then another question that came up was, how much sleep do we need? And so, the amount of sleep we need actually varies throughout our lives. Babies and young children, I'm sure as you noticed, infants age 4 months and under sleep between 16 and 18 hours per day. School-age children need between 9 and 11 hours, and adults require between about 7 and 8 hours of sleep each night. Obviously, this is general guideline. There could be some difference between individuals, obviously. Some people naturally require more, and some can perform just as well on less. So our sleep needs do change over time, depending on many factors: age, health, activity level. If you're feeling rested and alert throughout the day, you're probably getting enough sleep. But as I'll talk a little about on some of the other questions, if you're feeling constantly tired, obviously, it might be time to reassess your sleeping habits. Which sort of leads into the next question. What are the consequences of not getting enough sleep? And, lack of sleep, a lot of negative consequences, obviously, around that. Impaired memory, learning. You can also have a tough time concentrating and making decisions. Also, for some people, it can contribute to moodiness, irritability, depression. So lack of sleep is one of those things that, if it becomes chronic, like I mentioned, could lead to obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke. It can also weaken immune system. I think a lot of people sometimes when they travel a lot, they have a higher, well, they should just say they higher chance of perhaps getting sick, and it might be a little bit more difficult to fight off infections. So you really want to focus on quality rest, especially if you're traveling, which can be difficult sometimes. And how can you tell if you're not getting enough sleep was another question. Obviously, if you're feeling like you're having trouble concentrating or you're getting irritable, other ways is, just feeling sluggish or even trouble waking up or staying awake throughout the day. So you really want to check your sleeping habits, which will lead to one of the other questions that was asked. But what are some common myths around sleeping? Some people think that they can sort of train their bodies to function on less sleep. But research has shown that it's not possible to really adjust to sleeping fewer hours over time. You might get more used, you might get used to it a little bit, but it's essentially, you can't just program yourself. If you're programming yourself to sleep on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, that's just going to take a toll. Another one is that alcohol helps you fall asleep, and it may help you feel drowsy, and perhaps might help you fall asleep, but the quality of your sleep and the quality of sleep will go down, and it can lead to wakefulness during the night. So another myth is that, and hopefully people listening to my podcast don't think this, because I always talk about blue light, but people think that like watching TV can help them like wind down. I hear this a lot of times as like part of their routine to go to sleep. And don't get me wrong, there's times where I've watched something before bed, and if I did, I do wear my blue light blocking glasses, just so that it cuts the blue light coming in. But really, when you talk about relaxing and falling asleep, watching TV should not be at the top of the list, because if you're watching anything with blue light, this can suppress melatonin and make it more difficult to fall asleep. So definitely don't want to have that part of your sleep routine. Few more here. How can I improve excuse me, can't even talk. How can I improve my sleep habits? Well, I'll go through a couple of things that I think are great. One is making sure that you have a sleep environment that's conducive to relaxation. But I mean by that, it's comfortable, obviously. It's dark, it's quiet. Actually, one thing I've added, my wife and I added, is we have a sound machine. And the reason we put the sound machine was not because of us. There was this owl that's outside our house, and one of our dogs would hear it and then would start barking. And this happened on numerous occasions. So we added a sound machine, and actually we've learned to enjoy it. And we brought it on our recent trip because, if you're staying in a hotel, who knows what you're going to be hearing, people coming in late or this and that. So I really enjoy the sound machine. So if you've never tried one, that might not be a bad place to start. But dark and quiet is important, obviously. Establishing a regular sleep schedule would be another great sleep habit. Stick to that as much as possible, going to bed and waking up at the same time, even on weekends. This sort of resets your body's like internal clock, and it's going to make it easier to fall asleep at night. Lastly, avoiding caffeine and alcohol before bedtime would be ideal. They both can obviously interfere with quality sleep. I do have caffeinated beverages a lot of times before a workout, I might just make a coffee and add some of my LMNT sea salt in there, with Rob Wolf, who's been on my podcast. You can get a discount for LMNT, and I add that to my coffee. I use the his chocolate sea salt with coffee, homemade coffee, not from like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. Quality beans you want. But anyways, getting off the topic, avoid caffeine and alcohol before bed. Those are good those are sort of good things to abide by. Quality sleep environment, regular sleep schedule, avoid caffeine and alcohol before bed. A few more, and then we'll sort of sum it up here. What's the perfect amount of time for a nap? So everyone's a little bit different on this, but what I from my research, 20 to 30 minutes is ideal, because any shorter, you might not reap the benefits, and any longer, you're sort of gonna your body's gonna almost think it's going back into this deeper sleep in which you feel groggy and disoriented. You don't want that. You want something that's sort of just a quick, like, get you going, quick burst of energy. I do like power naps. I don't take them as much as maybe I should, but I don't feel like I really need to take them. Sometimes I'll close my eyes for 15 minutes, give or take. For me, I can close my eyes for 10, 15 minutes, and it's somewhat refreshing. But from the research I've seen, typically 20 to 30 minutes. You set your alarm, and it could be a pretty refreshing power nap. Here's a good one. Are there any natural remedies for any like sleep disorders, or to helping with sleep quality and to promote like relaxation? So some studies have found that valerian root can be as effective as certain medications for like insomnia, and have fewer side effects. So valerian root's one. Other natural remedies for sleep, I'm sure you've heard of chamomile tea, lavender oil, like an essential oil, lavender oil, magnesium. I will say this: after doing a hair mineral test through the company Upgraded Formulas, I had Bart and Scott on the podcast. Magnesium was something that I was a bit deficient in. I think a lot of people are, and it plays so many roles in your body. I could do a whole podcast on magnesium, but that's one that I've been supplementing with, and I have to say it has improved my quality of sleep. And I was taking it when I was traveling as well, so that might be one to look into. The magnesium supplements, there's a few companies if you're curious to try. I just interviewed Colin Stuckert from Wild Foods, and check out the link in the show notes for that. You can get he was offering a 23% discount if you put in Get Lean 23, and I actually just ordered his magnesium supplement. All his products are high quality, so I know where I'm getting it from, and so check that out. And then, as far as past supplementation is concerned, relaxation, breathing exercises are great. I had Avi Greenberg on the podcast, and I did some breath work with him for about 4 weeks, and that was unbelievable. So that's a great way to wind down. So some type of meditation or yoga could be great. Even if it's just like a 10-minute, guided meditation from like an app on your phone. I mean, obviously you don't want to like stare at your phone, close your eyes, but that could help you create, more of a restful state, ease some tension before bedtime. And then lastly, good one to finish up on: what is a good sleep routine? I would say first and foremost, you pick a time where you're going to start your routine, where you're just turning off all electronic devices and you're just sort of getting into this state of relaxation. So first and foremost, pick a time. I like to pick at least probably hour and a half ish before bed. The 2 hours would be ideal. Avoid caffeine and alcohol, obviously. Create a calm, relaxing environment. Cool as well. We keep our room pretty cool. I get it down to like, mid 60s, because your body temperature, the last thing you want to be is warm in bed. I'm sure we've all experienced that. And your body temperature tends to rise a touch as you go to sleep or during the middle of the night. So you want to make sure you have a cool environment. Reading a book is something that I love to do. And just establishing a consistent schedule as far as time is concerned, like I mentioned, I think so important. So give yourself time to wind down. This could be a meditation. This could be reading a book, maybe writing in a journal, and essentially just be consistent day in, day out. Obviously, you might have a day where you go out and your time's a little bit off, but if you can be consistent 90% of the time, I think that's important. And then just create that calm, cool environment that's nice and dark. Try the sound machine, especially I know a lot of kids use sound machines. My nieces and nephews have, but I have to say it's great. It sort of drowns out any sound that would be coming in and creates a nice, relaxing environment. So there you have it. That was about 7, 8, 9 questions right there around sleep. If you have anything more, or if there's another topic you want to touch on, feel free to email me, brian@briangryn.com. And look forward to a great week, and we will talk to you on Friday. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangryn.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.